Hi writers, welcome back to our work on baby literary essays. Today we are working on Band 2, Session 11. We're going to be talking about how writers study introductions and paragraphs. So remember, one of those really great things that writers and essayists do is they study mentor text. So we're going to be looking at some mentor examples today to talk about introductions and paragraphs. Right? Because if you're around with a group of friends and they don't know each other, do you just keep talking or do you stop and introduce? It's really important to have a strong introduction so people know what's going on. So this is what you need to know. Essayists include a small introduction. One way to get better at introductions is to study some and consider what should be included in an introduction. And I think you're going to find that some of this is review because we've been talking about it, especially when you go to evaluate your writing for the day. But today we're really going to dive deep into this part of our baby literary essay. So let's take a look at these introductions. Indian Shoes by Cynthia Lydic Smith is about a young boy who helps his grandpa get the moccasins he wanted. Ray is a thoughtful character. Ray in Indian Shoes is thoughtful. Ray thinks about his grandpa in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Have you ever been thoughtful? Ray is the main character in Indian Shoes. He is thoughtful again and again in the story. In Indian Shoes, Ray learns to be thoughtful. This great story teaches that being thoughtful can make you feel good. So take a second, and I want you to see if you can notice something that all or most of these have in common. When you have an idea, you can throw your hands on your head, and if you think of a few more, you can hold up some fingers to show me that. I'll give you a few seconds here. So one thing that they all have in common is it tells me what book or story we're talking about. And that's really important. Your reader might not have read your book before, or maybe they have, but you need to remind them what book it's about. So in this case, the authors all put Indian Shoes in there. And in our first one, we even included the author, which is important too. Maybe they really like your essay and they want to find more books about the author. Or sometimes different authors write books with the same title. So it's important to keep that in there too. They all tell me who we're talking about. And they all tell me their big, bold ideas. Ray is thoughtful. Ray thinks about his grandpa. Ray is thoughtful again and again. Ray learns to be thoughtful. So they get their big, bold idea in. They tell me about the characters and what book it's from. And if you've looked at your checklist at the end of each of your writings, you've been asked to do these things already. So your job today is I can draft or revise introductions for my flash drafts. So I know I'm successful when I revisit my last 2 flash drafts. So we're talking about your last 2. I add an introduction if I don't have one. So maybe you didn't do an introduction. Or I make my introduction stronger using the exemplar. So you can go back to this slide and look at these as an example of a mentor text to help you in your writer's notebook today. You've got a really great chart here to remind you what a good literary essay introduction includes. The title of the text, the author, the name of the main character, your big, bold opinion. And then sometimes there's another sentence to support, or you might ask your reader a question to connect. And there only have to be about 2 to 3 sentences. Then you'll see I did also give you space for revision if you need it. So you can go back to your last 2 drafts if you need to that are on previous pages of your notebook. If you're revising or adding and you still have space. And you also have a page here too, if you need it, to work on adding to your introduction. There's one more thing I want to talk to you about today though. The idea of making paragraphs. So writers clarify their ideas by paragraphing each part of their essay, and an introduction should be its own paragraph. If you look at this model essay here, we can clearly see we have our introduction, our body, and our conclusion. So remember, when you're typing, you're going to hit Tab to get that indent. If you're editing, you can draw the arrow to show you should have an indent there. And if you're writing, if you kind of take your finger sometimes and just place it on that line, nice and wide, that'll remind you of how to space out where your indent should be to show a new paragraph. In your journal, writer's notebook, we also gave you separate pages to help you with this, but as we start getting ready to publish some of our thoughts, you want to make sure that you know your introduction, even if you hand wrote it on its own page, is just going to be its own paragraph. So at the end too, I want to take a moment to share some of your introductions, whether you added or revised one, and I want you to continue to think of this checklist. It is the same one that is over here in your notebook. And then don't forget, writers clarify their ideas by paragraphing each part, and your introduction is going to be its own paragraph. Okay? Don't worry about spelling too much today, especially with the author's name. Just give it your best try. Okay? Off you go, friends.